Hey everyone, Ben Coomber Radio, episode number 100. So you kept commenting, you kept saying, so Ben, who's going to be the 100th guest? It's got to be a really big show. As I said on episode 98, every show is a big show. So you can be the judge of whether this is going to be a big show or not. But I'm very excited to interview this young fella. I consider myself a young, dashing chap, and this guy is even younger. Probably not as dashing, let's be honest. He's from Ireland. He's a competitive physique model. He's very inspiring. He's got an awesome story. I am joined today by a man called Ben Mudge. Hello.
How's it going?
Ben, I'm awesome. Don't forget to speak up for our...
Yeah.
We can't quite get this sound right so far. Thank you for joining me on the show. It is great to have you. For people that have no idea who you are, who on earth's Ben Mudge?
Well, basically, I'm just Ben Mudge. I've never really seen myself as someone important or kind of special in any way, but whenever I started getting into this industry, I quickly realized that I was not really like most of the people in it. One of the big things being that I have cystic fibrosis, and the more I got into this industry, the more I realized how big it was, and how much I'd actually achieved with it. Because I don't know anyone else with cystic fibrosis personally, because realistically, you shouldn't really be communicating with people with cystic fibrosis on a one-to-one level, simply because of cross infection. So whenever I started doing this I started getting contacted by people with cystic fibrosis, and that really opened my eyes to how severe and how crippling this illness can be. Luckily, I've kept myself very, very healthy, and I've been extremely fortunate the way I was brought up, the way my parents raised me, and again, I've worked my ass off to make sure that I don't have to take lots of medication, and my diet's one of the big things that I look at to keep my immune system up so I don't catch chest infections and then land myself in hospital. That's pretty much who I am, and I lift weights.
Nice, mate. It's humble and it's simple. I like it. You'll have to excuse any ignorance that I have on this podcast, because obviously my exposure of cystic fibrosis is minimal because I don't work in that kind of area of health and nutrition. So I've obviously done a bit of research this morning to try and aid me in what we're going to talk about today. So excuse any knowledge gaps. At what point in your life did cystic fibrosis become an issue? Was it right from birth? Was there triggers in your childhood that made it more apparent? And I suppose at what point did it start to impact things, and for you and your family to sort of pay attention and go, oh okay?
To be honest, I was diagnosed at birth. It was quite a scary story, actually, because my mum and dad didn't. Basically, for your child to have cystic fibrosis, you and your mum or your parents need to be both carriers. My parents had no idea. Sure. They're both carriers. You could be a carrier and you wouldn't even know.
Sure.
So I was diagnosed from birth, but the funny thing is, well, not really funny, but I find it funny now. Randomly, a doctor came in after I was about 6 hours old, and a doctor came in and just said there's something not right with him. Just off the cuff, something not right with him. He went over, had a look at me, and he said I need to bring him to the emergency room, and they operated on me. An operation called mecoleomylus, which is why I have, if anyone's ever seen me with my shirt off, which is probably a common sight. I've got a large scar in my abdomen, just below my belly button, and that's from the mecoleomylus operation that Mr. Boston, he's a surgeon, performed on me, which saved my life. Realistically, my parents didn't. I had an older brother and I have a younger sister, and I never really. Part of me knew there was something different about me. Mm-hmm. I got the Mars bars when my brothers and sister had the apples, because I had to keep my fat content up much higher because I don't absorb fats. I'm pancreatic deficient, which is another thing that comes along with having cystic fibrosis. So I had to eat Mars bars when my brother and sister had to eat, apples and stuff, and all I wanted was apples because they had them. But again, nothing really stuck out until I think I was about 8, and I got a bowel obstruction, and that nearly killed me. So that took me out of a couple of days of school, and then it also happened again about 2 years later. So my bowels were a big problem when I was younger. I think it was simply because I was eating so much processed food. Because my mum and dad were just told, they had very limited knowledge on nutrition. My mum was a nurse, but all she was told by the CF clinic was make sure he has a lot of fats, because he doesn't absorb them as well as regular people do. So she gave me fats, which then I took in hand and was like, okay, I can eat anything I want. So that led to me having 2 bowel obstructions, which was, excruciating. And I didn't realise until about 2 years ago when my mum was talking to me about them, how close I was to actually not pulling through. Mm-hmm. It sounds kind of weird, just from a blocked up stomach, but, now that I've learned a lot about the gut and how integral it is to your health, I realise how deadly that was. Primary school was fine. Was never really made to feel any different. I was one of the fastest kids in school. I didn't feel any different at all. The scar on my stomach was hidden quite nicely by some skinny abs, which was always good. And then secondary school, again, I was one of the fastest kids in school. I was one of the 100 meters was one of my favorite events. I played rugby, I played football, I played basketball. There was nothing that I felt that I need to be excluded for because of my cystic fibrosis. It's really whenever I started going into kind of late teenage years, 18, 19, when I got sick for the first time. I basically caught a chest infection. We think it was from a flight over to the States, and that crippled me. Whenever a regular person gets a chest infection, the mucus will sit in your lungs and you'll feel a bit down and you won't be able to breathe as clearly as you would normally, and you'll take the correct antibiotic course and you'll be fine. Mm-hmm. The difference with mine is that mucus gets down into the cells in the lungs and can scar the tissue within the lungs. So essentially that means that you lose that portion of the lung. It's scarred permanently. So the thing that kills most people with cystic fibrosis is they get chest infection after chest infection, and eventually the lungs get damaged to the point where they're maybe functioning at about 15%.
Wow.
And they test that basically every time I go to the CF clinic, which is like a 3-month thing. They test your lung function. So if anyone ever sees me posting about lung functions that doesn't have cystic fibrosis, it's basically one of the main indicators of how healthy I am. And it's on a scale, it's in a percentage scale. Mm-hmm. So 100% would be someone my age, weight, and height without cystic fibrosis. So that would be what they consider 100%.
Sure.
Mine in secondary school was pretty much throughout the entire time. Again, when I was in primary school, was 100% plus. So I was actually healthier than someone without it. Once I got this chest infection, it dropped to about 60% at its lowest, which was the equivalent of someone holding the bottom of both my lungs closed. So stuff like running upstairs would just, it would put me out of breath, which to me was like, it was just strange to feel, being so fit and so active, and then that being a struggle. That was terrifying. So that basically landed me in hospital for, it was 3 weeks of IV courses, which to me was foreign. I mean, most people with cystic fibrosis have it maybe 4 or 5, maybe even 6 times a year, getting those IV courses, because their immune system is just so low, and they're just not as healthy as I would be. And the fact of the matter is that most of them just don't look after themselves. They've given up almost, which is exactly what I am 100% against. I've been given something that will either the way I look at my illness is you can either roll over and be like, oh, okay, I've got this illness. I have an excuse now. I have a valid excuse to not want to do things. I have a valid excuse to give up on things. Whereas I see it as really the way I see it is only the strongest are tested. Sure. And I've been tested in a way that is, again, I don't see myself as anything special. I'm just, in my opinion, I'm doing what I think needs to be done. And it's the only way that it can be done. And I just want to prove people wrong who have said that I can't do things. That's my biggest drive. When someone says I can't do something, I will go way out of my way to do that.
Well, that's awesome, and it's obviously an attitude I would encourage with anyone, regardless of what someone has. I mean, I don't think, not to say that CF isn't something we need to be aware of, but, people don't really have an excuse to do the things that they need to do anyway, regardless of a condition. So you got the chest infection going to America, that reduced your lung function to 60. Did you then get more chest infections and obviously lose more lung function? Like, how did it continue to pan out?
Yeah, so I got into hospital, and my obvious concern was this is going to stay at 60% because it's been damaged. So I asked a team of doctors. I mean, these really top guys. There was a Canadian guy who came in because he was one of the top doctors in Canada on cystic fibrosis and respiratory diseases. And I said to them, they were all doing their kind of rounds, and I said to them, look, is there a chance my lungs may be damaged permanently to this percentage? And they said, yeah, there's a pretty good chance. And I said, so I'll never be back up at 100%. And they said, well, yeah, that could be a real possibility. And as soon as I heard that, my parents were sitting in the room, and that crushed me. The thought of not being able to play sports with my friends and, just do things that I had been used to doing my entire life, to be taken away that quickly, it was terrifying. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I wouldn't use that word very often, but it scared me. It shook me quite a bit. So I got out. My lungs were pretty bad. They were. You take the IVs, you get rid of the infection, but your chest is still pretty tight. So I basically took it upon myself. I thought, right, well, people can increase their lung capacity. Swimmers and such can increase their lung capacity by getting fitter, doing more aerobic exercises. Why can't I? Surely there's nothing in me that, my CF hasn't affected me to that extent where I can't get fit, more fit. I can't increase my fitness levels. So I thought, you know what, I'll just try it. So I started doing sprints again. I had to work my way up. Getting on a treadmill for 5 minutes for a jog was taxing. But again, I was stubborn. I get that from my mum. I was stubborn, and I just built that up to 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 8, 9, 10. Eventually I brought it back down to 5 and ran a bit faster. And eventually I was able to run down to my work, which was down the road from me. Worked in a little corner shop. But that was my big goal, to be able to run back down there, because I used to run down there all the time. Mm-hmm. Obviously, when I got sick, I couldn't do that. I had to walk or cycle. But that was my goal, to be able to run down there and get to work and not be collapsing over the till. And I did. I managed to come back to the CF clinic and get my lung functions tested bearing in mind, it took me about a year to get them back. But I got them up to 100% again. Wow. And that's one of the, that was essentially one of those things where they said, no, you can't, you won't be able to do this. And, excuse me, and I did. So just, again, it's almost, it's one of those memories that whenever I think I can't do something, or, I'm struggling, and it's almost self-inspiration, which it's rare to come across, and it's hard to say to people without sounding arrogant, but if you can't inspire yourself, then it's going to be very hard for an external source to inspire you. If you can't take inspiration from things that you've done to kind of push yourself on, then in my opinion, external inspiration, it should really be a secondary source. You should be your main source of inspiration. So
I agree. when people talk to me and they struggle with why they want to do things, they say, Ben, how do you find the inspiration to, I don't know, run a marathon, lose weight, whatever it is? And I say, well, you can look in external sources, but those external sources will never be your source of inspiration. You've got to find a reason inside. Like, I say you could say to parents, like, your inspiration for losing weight could be that next year that you want to be able to run around your garden and play football with your kids without panting and needing a rest and a glass of water before you get up for your next 5 minutes. Like this inspiration has got to come from somewhere, and it's got to be emotional as well, right? You've got to attach it to an emotional drive, because that's what actually kind of gets you up. And I suppose, when you were lying in that hospital bed and you were thinking, right, I've got all this damage, how am I going to repair it? This is going to be my plan. And you were probably a bit scared because the mountain seemed really huge, but you had to take the first step to get onto the mountain anyway. But once you had your first small little victory, and this is why you sort of say to people when you're a coach, do you know what, the most important thing is not really about how you're going to start, it's just about starting. Because as soon as you have a mini victory, you go, well, that mini victory can lead to another little mini victory, and then we'll get to a medium-sized victory, and then when we get to a big victory, you'll really inspire yourself to do some really cool stuff.
Yep.
So, looking at like the present, obviously cystic fibrosis affects like the lungs, the organs, the gut. What do you have to do on a daily basis now to kind of like manage what are the normal symptoms of cystic fibrosis compared to normal people?
Well, I'm pancreatic deficient, which again is cystic fibrosis isn't just one. There's not just one symptom. There's various. There's so many mutations of it as well. Again, it's a genetic thing, so not everyone's genetics are the same. I've got the most common form of cystic fibrosis, which affects 50% of the population. So but again, that doesn't mean that someone with the same mutation has the exact same things as me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm pancreatic deficient, which basically means my pancreas doesn't release digestive enzymes correctly, or doesn't release them at all. So I take digestive enzyme tablets with everything I eat. So everything that has fat, protein, carbs I can manage, but realistically it's hard to find a carb that doesn't have any fats or protein in it. So I take tablets with everything I eat, which is, I'm used to it because I've done it all my life.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a bit of a pain sometimes having to carry them in your wallet, and you sit in your wallet and you crush them all, and they end up in your back pocket, and there's these tiny little beads and everything. It's a nightmare, but again, it's a small price to pay to be able to enjoy food and digest it and get the most out of it. Realistically, it's not a great deal. Other than that, I take a multivitamin again because my gut doesn't digest things, so the vitamins aren't released properly into my bloodstream. They aren't able to be broken down, especially the fat-soluble vitamins. And then I take a nebulizer, which is essentially, again, that's something I took when I was younger, then got out of the way of it because I was so active that I didn't really, it's basically a way of clearing the airways of any mucus that's in there. Because I was so active aerobically, playing rugby and sprinting and American football, I never really had to do it. So it didn't really become much of a routine or a habit for me, which I'm now trying to get back into, because cystic fibrosis is essentially, the older you get, the worse it gets, and it's scary. It's scary thinking about stuff like that. The more I find that the more I dwell on stuff like that, the worse it gets, and you can pretty quickly get into a pretty scary state of mind.
Yeah, I could imagine you could get yourself into a dark place. I mean, with the conversations that you have with like the doctors and the medical community, they've obviously probably been startled by how you have managed your CF and the improvements that you've made, and essentially living a close to what we would describe as normal life. With the improvements that you keep making, or the management that you make, what future have they almost painted? Because it's not going to be the same as everyone else.
No, I mean, basically, I go every 3 months, and they test my bloods, they test my lung functions, and really just have a chat with me and see what I've been doing. I can overhear conversations that basically, whenever you go into the CF clinic, because cross contamination is a big thing. They don't want people's bugs jumping across from each other. Mm-hmm. You go in and you sit in separate rooms, so you don't really see. It's probably the most antisocial illness I've heard of. You literally don't know anybody. You see them, you see their faces when you kind of can look across the room, but apart from that, that's it. So I've overheard some people's conversations. Not purposely. I haven't got my ear pressed against the wall, but some of the stuff that other people have to deal with is just, it's crippling. My lung functions currently are 96%. Again, I got sick again about, was it 3 years ago? And they got dropped all the way down to 70% again. And I've slowly built them back up. 96 is the highest I've had since I was 19. So I'm pretty proud of that figure, but I've heard people who are my age with 30s, wow, 20s, and again their weight. Another big thing with cystic fibrosis, again, because we can't digest foods properly, putting on weight is a big issue. Most of my weight is muscle, which is what I'm trying to get across to the doctors, is like, stop encouraging people to eat crap, because that, I've spoken to people with cystic fibrosis and their doctors have prescribed them to eat and drink as much sugary McDonald's crap that they can get in, because they think, oh well, if they're not going to absorb it all, then they can eat whatever they want.
Sure.
And anyone who's got any knowledge of nutrition is that your gut cannot break down those type of things, and it puts a lot of stress in your gut. That then will then affect your immune system, which then will make you sick more often, which means you'll have to go into hospital and take IVs and eat hospital food, which is notoriously brilliant. So it's kind of a vicious cycle that they're telling me this stuff to try and put on weight, to try and get better, and then that stuff that they're trying to eat is making them worse.
So, well, let's backtrack a little bit, because obviously when you were younger, they said the thing to you like, eat what you want. You're eating Mars bars and all this kind of stuff, which are very calorific. Now, I can imagine right now where you are with your diet and taking the digestive enzymes and stuff. Do you eat a diet that calorically is what someone with your goals, with non-CF, should be eating?
Yeah.
So the medical community, instead of saying, right, there's this amazing case study here, there's this guy that's, showing us that we don't have to do all this stuff and pile junk down. If we recommended or prescribed, let's say, digestive enzymes and other aids that might help people digest food, can these people then eat a normal, well-balanced nutritional regime?
It's one of those things where I would love to say yes, but medically, I can't. That's one of the most frequently asked questions I get is, what do you eat? How many calories do you eat? And, all that stuff. And to be honest, I don't track it. I eat clean foods. I do now, and it's been a huge, as said, I've tried to learn as much as I can about the gut. Mainly about the immune system, and I've learned that if your gut is healthy, your immune system's healthy, and that's all I care about. If I am healthy, I'm less likely to get chest infection, therefore I'm not likely to be put back in hospital. So whilst I don't always eat amazing food, I'll have a pizza, I'll have a packet of sweets, I'm human. Most of my choices of foods are single ingredient, nutrient dense foods. So salmon, chicken, avocados, rice, oats, eggs, kind of bro foods, but they work. They work for me. So I just tell people with cystic, I put a video up on my Facebook page a while ago because I get inundated with messages that I simply can't reply to because I'm not allowed to give out that specific information to people with cystic fibrosis. I can get in a lot of trouble if I do. So I just put 4 points across and just said, look, this is all I can do. I'm sorry if I don't get back to you. I read every single message I get on Facebook, but I can't reply to them all. I just don't have the time in the day, and I'm not allowed to.
Mm-hmm.
So I put up a video just saying my 4 top points of what I do, and what people can do to help them get healthier. And one of those was eat nutrient dense foods.
And what were the other 3 points?
Be active. Be as active as you can. Whether it's going out for a walk, walking down to the shops rather than driving. Because I know that people with cystic fibrosis aren't all the same as me. I can't just say, "Oh, do HIIT training," because HIIT training would literally be like running a triple marathon for some people.
Mm-hmm.
Take your medication, which was obviously a big point. Don't ignore your doctors. They know what they're doing. They've studied their entire lives. Just because I disagree with a few things that they're saying doesn't mean that you shouldn't go off and not take any medicine. What was the fourth one? Fourth one has gone blank. I can't remember. But those were the main 3 anyway.
Sure. Take
your medicines, be as active as you can, and eat nutrient-dense foods.
Okay, nice. Do you find that, because obviously you're a coach and trainer now, is that what you do full-time? Like PT and online kind of stuff?
Yeah.
So
full-time.
Are a lot of your clients people in similar situations, or do you have quite like a normal range of clients, or do you find that actually because of your situation you've been getting quite a lot of people that resonate with you with quite an array of almost different symptomologies and issues?
Yeah, it's been pretty mixed. My one-to-one clients of all, my ones I see in Rock Pit would be kind of the run-of-the-mill normal gym goers. Most of them have actually, which is it's amazing to me, most of them have picked me just simply because of how I look.
Sure.
To me, again, that's a huge thing. I've never ever wanted to be weak looking. It's been a thing in my head, whether I didn't realize it. I didn't address it really until I think it was about 2 years ago when someone asked me why I love superheroes so much. And I thought about it and I was like, well, it's because they're superheroes. Who doesn't like superheroes? But then I started really thinking about it on a kind of different level. And I was like, well, superheroes are something you kind of can look at and take inspiration from, and they're strong, and they're kind of all the things that people want to be. And I looked at them thinking, you know what, some of them are these people who are small and frail looking, but once they put on this kind of costume, they're this heroic figure. And I could really relate to that because I thought, not many people know, looking at me, what I have and what I have to deal with. So essentially this, like, just whatever I can build, whatever muscle I can put on will kind of add to this costume that I have, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
And make kind of covers over those weaknesses that I don't want anyone to see.
Because I think if individuals get into health and fitness at any level, it builds so much kind of self-confidence in people, and that's why I encourage it so much. And I think that's another reason why this podcast has almost we've started to talk a bit more about psychology and business and life progression and personal development, because I personally believe that if you're going to be successful in anything at life, it's so much more powerful and you get there so much quicker if you nail your health and your fitness, because health and fitness creates dedication, it creates consistency, it makes you feel a bit indestructible, it makes you feel strong, it gives you the right mindset, it creates a healthy mindset because you probably eat well, and I know what you mean. If you kind of almost turn yourself into a bit of a superhero, you function on a higher level. It's as simple as that. Yeah.
I mean, one of the coolest things was if you ever see me post up a picture, there's a pretty high chance that I'll be wearing a superhero t-shirt. But one of the pictures I put up that went crazy viral, like, I mean, my page has only got like 10,000 people on it. Compared to some of the people I know, it's like nothing.
Yeah.
But I put up a picture of me taking my nebulizers and like doing a bicep shot and just saying, make sure you take your nebulizers. And it went crazy. I was wearing a Superman top, and people in the comments, these kids, they basically started putting up pictures of themselves taking their nebulizers with their own superhero costume, like their t-shirts on with their Superman things.
That's
and,
awesome.
And it's probably one of the most. I mean, I'm hopefully not many people watching the video here because eyes are getting a wee bit glazy. But that was one of the most powerful things I've ever seen. When them saying like, oh, then I get messages from parents just saying my son or my daughter has just asked me whether you're a superhero or not. I was like, well, bloody well, I hope you told them I was, because that's awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big, big thing as well for me, is that I have kids looking up to me, as young as 3. Again, one of my photo shoots I did was me in a pair of red pants. And that day, I got a picture from this young guy called Ruben, who was doing the exact same pose as me. Sorry, Enzo. His name was Enzo. He's a mum he's got cystic fibrosis. And his mum sent me a picture of him doing the same pose. There's a wee goatee on him and everything. He was wearing a pair of red swimming trunks and like doing the same pose as me. And I was just like, that's mind blowing to think that someone's taking their time to do that is just so humbling. And I've yet to come to terms, and I've yet to know how to deal with stuff like that, because it just feels like I said I'm not doing it. In my opinion, I'm not doing anything different to what anyone else would do in my situation. So it's I've yet to register how to deal with stuff like that. I'm just like,
but
whoa,
I think it's actually more humbling that you'll never learn how to deal with it, because otherwise it will never really surprise you. And the fact that you've been taken aback, and rightly so, that people have done this and you've inspired them to do it, you're left a little bit kind of speechless or breathless. And I think that's the way people should respond. If you deal with that like in some kind of proud way or whatever, then it kind of shows that you've kind of developed your own ego about what you're trying to do. So I think what your reaction is perfect, really.
Cheers.
So I just wanted to wrap up on a final thing, because regardless of CF or not, people will be just intrigued as to how you set up your own nutrition and training. Like that's the question you're going to get most. It's a question we all get in the fitness industry all the time. Is Ben, what do you do? So we mentioned nutrition. You eat a very good diet of normal whole foods, which is what I would promote 100%. You don't really seem to track things a whole deal in terms of calories and macronutrients. You go by feel. You keep it decent most of the time. So that's kind of covered your nutrition. We've kind of looked at your supplementation. What does your training look like? How do you like to set up your training? I suppose to both look at the aesthetics, and I'm assuming you're continuing to look at your cardio side for your lung function.
Yeah. Basically, I like kind of going. It sounds really bad, but I like doing the kind of bro split. Well, in a way. I then changed it. That's why I started training. It was chest and triceps, back and biceps, shoulders, legs, abs, whatever. But then I started looking at myself as a kind of physique competitor, and I started then saying, right, well, I've got a week back, and I've got a week arms and chest and shoulders and legs. So I kind of figured out, right, I need to train some things twice a week. For instance, my chest, I would throw chest in twice a week, making sure I have about at least 3 days between sessions to make sure I've got maximum recovery, because as you know, and people know, that rest is probably the most important thing. You damage in the gym and you regain and gain at night. So my training's pretty standard. I kind of like throwing big body parts together. I've done I posted up the other day. I did an arm session for the first time in ages, because I don't really see the point in doing arms. They're just too small to really stimulate any form of growth hormone. But I do them just for fun. It's always nice to get a good arm pump.
That it is.
I like supersetting. Supersetting I found to be a fantastic way of not only getting your sessions done faster, you get a really, really good pump as well, which is what I I really enjoy in the gym. Like I found out that I grow far better from just getting pumped than doing strength lifts. You know, 2 1s, you know, 3s and all that stuff. Supersetting exercise, big compounds like deadlifts and pull-ups. I mean, I challenge anybody to lift maximally. You know, I'm doing 15 plus reps. I challenge anybody to do 15 plus reps deadlifts followed by pull-ups. You know, to maximal and extent with perfect form, and I guarantee they'll be out of breath.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I don't like doing cardio. I'm going to be like everybody else. I don't like doing cardio. It bores me. HIIT training I enjoy, but again, just like everyone else, you kind of really need to be in the right mindset to do a HIIT session. You know, you can't just walk in and be like, oh, okay, I'm just going to do the most intense workout.
Yeah.
You need to be like, right, I'm going to go do this. So yeah, supersetting's a big thing. Giant sets, drop sets, anything that can get my heart rate up and me out of breath, as well as stimulating the maximum amount of muscle tissue, then I'm all for. Quad setting's a new one I've been doing, which is quite fun. I got introduced that by a guy, Davey Lawson. He came down to train with me one day, and he made me do a quad set, and that was an absolute killer. So stuff like that.
Nice. Okay, cool. But
yeah.
That's really refreshing that you've just kind of, I suppose, been really, we could call it boring, because it's the basics that work every time. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know how many times you have to say it to clients and we have to say it on the podcast, but, the fundamentals is 80% of the stuff that we talk about in nutrition is going to be relevant to pretty much everyone. Same with training, and then it's that 20% that you need to investigate in your own time and find out if that works for you. Just like you found that strength training doesn't build as much muscle for you. Brilliant, which I'm kind of surprised at in a way, because it sounds like you have quite a lot of fast twitch muscle fibers from being a sprinter. So I would question whether your early experiments with strength training had actually had that much volume in it, because obviously 4 sets of 3 reps compared to 4 sets of 10 reps is going to be vastly different. But if you did 8 sets of 3 reps compared to 4 sets of 10 reps, would we start to match the reps, and obviously the load would be greater?
Yeah. The one thing, I don't know if you've heard of it, Muscle Genes. Have you heard of it?
I know of. We actually discussed, we didn't discuss any company in particular, but we discussed DNA testing on the last podcast with Rachel Guy.
Okay. Again, opinions are all different. The company I work for, I'm associated with, which I've just mentioned now, I don't know if that's a bad thing or a good thing for you. They did my tests and they found out that slow twitch I was more predominantly slow twitch, which for me was like crazy, because I was a sprinter.
Yeah,
I was wing, I was a fullback, I was running back, quarterback. I was always fast. But again, it's your genetics. I trained for that position. I was put in that position because of my size.
Mm-hmm.
I was never a forward ever. But I was put in that position for a reason, because I was always smaller than everyone else in school. So that was quite surprising. But then I was speaking to my parents about it, and obviously it's a genetic thing, so it's passed on from your parents. My dad used to run marathons for fun. He was in the army, and he was fit. And again, similar to my mum, was very much aerobic based. She would do hockey and never any explosive work really. So that made sense to me, why they said that I'd be better suited to higher reps, less weight, more volume. But the way I structure my training now is 2 heavy sets, so 6 to 8 reps for the first set of each muscle group, followed by then 15 plus reps. And it hurts. It really, really hurts, but it's a really interesting way of training, and I think I've gained from it quite well.
No, I think I'm a huge fan of structuring most people's training like that. I think everyone should start with a staple, big, strength-based exercise. I'll go in the gym and I'll work, like today, for example, I'll do 6 sets of box squats at 3 reps. So that'll be my big A, and then I'll drop down to more kind of volume stuff, but I'll do trisets, so I'm working on my conditioning at the same time. Again, playing rugby, I'm always looking at my conditioning level, as well as getting as much volume in as possible, because I can only get in 2 days a week at the gym. Otherwise, I'd just be beaten up.
In rugby.
Yeah, I mean, you have a bad game, and the last thing you want to do is go squat. Like, it's just not happening. But I think that was interesting about your HIIT comment. Like, there's no way. I mean, I don't really like HIIT training. I like doing sprinting. I'll do some sprint work with my brother or someone. But I always put myself in an environment where I get forced to do HIIT. So I save my conditioning for rugby. And I'm more than happy to get shouted at by someone else to run, jump, leap, do press-ups, hit someone, flip something, drag something. Because the environment will push you just so much quicker than anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I say to my clients. That's the biggest thing about having a PT. It's just having someone there that pushes you to do that one more rep, or to go a little bit faster, or to move on to the next exercise a little bit faster. That can be all it takes for you to get results. If that's what you have a PT, you may be one of the smartest guys in the gym, but as you've probably spoken to hundreds of people who are really experienced in training, but everybody knows that you kind of work to your own comfort zone in the gym.
Oh, of course.
No matter how experienced you are, it's so hard to push yourself out of your own comfort zone without someone there yelling at you to do so.
And that's why I don't write my training programs anymore. Like, I stopped about a year ago because I thought, I train pretty hard, but there's definitely stuff I'm avoiding. And getting someone else to write it was the best thing that I ever did. And also, like, and this is a really interesting point for any personal trainers listening. Like, we're in the personal training game, and we're encouraging other people to get personal training and coaching with us, but we rarely get personal trained by anyone else. So we never experience what we're delivering to other people. We just assume that the knowledge that comes in will just be applied naturally. But that's why I always say to people, like, it's so important to have a mentor, or get put through your paces yourself, or have a training partner, or get someone else to write your programs, because you'll always get different ideas. You'll always get pushed outside your comfort zone. You'll always get inspiration from other people. And you'll just generally advance yourself, your body, your knowledge, your psychology, and your mindset far better and quicker in my eyes.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I think that the worst thing you can be as a personal trainer is complacent. Once you stop trying to learn more things, that's when you're going to really stop becoming a good personal trainer, in my opinion. Once you feel like, oh, I know enough. No one knows enough. Phil Learning doesn't even know enough.
No.
Well, I'm saying that, I'm sure he would agree. I'm going to one of his courses next month, and I cannot wait. I mean, the guy's like a walking encyclopedia. But I guarantee if you said to him, do you know everything you want to know? I guarantee he would say no. I'm saying him as an example because he's one of the most knowledgeable PTs that I've ever heard of.
Mm-hmm.
But again, he'll probably say, oh, I'd like to learn a little bit more in this area, in this area, in this area. And that's, in my opinion, that's a good PT. A good PT will admit that he doesn't know everything, but he wants to know everything.
Exactly. I think it's also why the personal training industry has actually some really, really bad statistics on how long people stay in the industry. Like, it's crazy. It's like 90% of PTs quit after 6 years, and like 80% quit after the first 18 months. And if you think, and this is why I suppose I hate some of the big corporate gym companies, because for me they don't do enough to actually inspire people to stay, continually learn, stay within the job, inspire them in different ways. It's just, you get caught up in the corporate chain, you become a cog in the wheel, you train clients, you get your cash, and and a lot of people that listen to this podcast probably work in a box or a private type gym, own a gym, or are a keen trainer. There probably wouldn't be as many commercial gym trainers listening to this podcast, purely because the route to access of getting this information just isn't really there. So I'm really hoping that this podcast gets its way into all the commercial gyms around the country and all the PTs. That's one of my goals, but it's really hard to get it into these places, without just inspiring individuals and letting them hear about it. But I suppose that's why we love our industry, because it keeps you fresh. Like, it really does. Yeah. But you've also, like you said earlier on, you've got to inspire yourself.
It's true, yeah.
All right, then, Ben. We're gonna cut this podcast. It's been 45 minutes, which is absolutely perfect. Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure. Really pleased that you shared everything with us today. Hopefully, it'll make people think, and hopefully, as well, this will reach some people that suffer with cystic fibrosis, and then some other issues that maybe people are in a place where they think they can't help themselves, and they can. You've shown that people can. It's just people have to find a path. They have to find the right inspiration. They have to find the knowledge. They have to apply it. And they've got to apply a massive dose of patience.
Yeah, hard work as well. It's nothing. I've not been given anything. It's all been me taking it. So
good. Ben, if people want to find you, follow you, get in touch with you, where's the best way? Where do you want to direct them?
Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Instagram's kind of my fun account.
Okay.
That's the way I see it. It's just a load of pictures. So I'll put up kind of random pictures. That's I think Ben Mudge Fitness on Instagram. Twitter's at Ben Mudge PT, and then Facebook is just Ben Mudge. It should pop up.
There we go, people. Search Ben Mudge. You've had it. So, Ben, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. To everyone that's listening, you are all awesome. If you enjoyed the show, please share it on iTunes. Please share it on Stitcher, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever your favoured platform of interaction is. Please give it a share. If you haven't listened, if you haven't given us a review, then please give us a review. I would be honoured. Me and Rachel will be on the show next. My next guest will be Alex Manos, who is a functional medicine practitioner. And then after that, as a guest, we will have Anna back from Protein Pal talking about her new cookbook and all the cool things that she's doing. And as we all know, we've all got a massive soft spot for Anna. Until then, Ben, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ben. Congratulations on 100.
Thank you. Yes, the big 100. I almost forgot.
Yes, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, I suppose, for supporting the show and keeping me inspired to keep going to 100. And here's to 200. Thank you, Ben. Everyone that's listening, I will speak to you soon. Hey everyone, Ben Coomber Radio, episode number 99. Anyway, are you well?
I'm very well, thank you. I've had a very busy couple of weeks settling back into things. Now I'm back from my travels.